I watched through my kitchen window as the plow truck turned onto Maple Ridge Drive at 7 in the morning, and something about the way it accelerated made my stomach drop. The snow had stopped falling 3 hours ago, leaving maybe 4 inches on the ground, nothing the neighborhood couldn't handle with normal plowing. But this truck was moving faster than it should, and as it approached my house, I saw the blade angle sharply toward my property line. My name is Ethan Vance, and I had spent the last 3 years transforming my front yard from basic suburban lawn into something I was genuinely proud of. Japanese maples flanked the walkway, their branches carefully pruned. A rock garden with native plants created a natural border along the sidewalk. Stone planters held winter-hardy evergreens that stayed green even under snow. The whole setup had cost me nearly $15,000 and countless weekends of work. I had researched every plant, placed every stone myself, built raised beds to protect the roots from road salt. The plow hit my landscaping like a battering ram. Snow and ice exploded across my yard, but that was not the worst part. The blade caught the edge of my stone planter and ripped it apart, sending rocks flying. One of my Japanese maples bent at an unnatural angle as the plow's momentum carried chunks of frozen earth and debris into it. The driver did not slow down, did not stop. He just kept going, leaving a trail of destruction that made me stand frozen at my window in disbelief. I ran outside in my slippers and pajamas, not even bothering with a coat. The cold bit through my thermal shirt, but I barely noticed. My rock garden was demolished. The planter was in pieces. My maple tree hung at a 45-degree angle, roots partially exposed. Soil and mulch mixed with snow and ice across the lawn. The other maple had lost several branches, snapped clean off by the force of the impact. My neighbor, old Mr. Chen, stood on his porch shaking his head. "I saw the whole thing," he called over. "That driver aimed right at your yard. I have never seen anyone plow like that." I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures, my hands shaking from cold and rage. This was not an accident. The plow had been on the street, then deliberately angled toward my property. There were no ice patches that would have caused the driver to lose control. The road was relatively clear. My wife Sarah came running out with my coat. "Oh my God, Ethan, this is horrible. What happened?" "The HOA plow just destroyed everything," I said, my voice tight. "Just drove right through it." Sarah looked at the damage, her hand covering her mouth. "Can we even save the trees?" "I do not know. Maybe the other might be completely ruined." I took more pictures, documenting every angle. "I am calling the HOA right now." I dialed the number for the Maple Ridge Homeowners Association, my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. The phone rang 4 times before someone picked up. "Maple Ridge HOA, this is Patricia speaking." "This is Ethan Vance at 847 Maple Ridge Drive. Your plow just destroyed my landscaping. Thousands of dollars in damage. I need someone out here immediately." Patricia's voice remained maddeningly calm. "Sir, we will need to file an incident report. Can you describe what happened?" "What happened is your driver aimed the plow directly at my property and tore through my rock garden, planters, and trees. This was not an accident." "I am sure our driver would not do that intentionally," Patricia said. "Sometimes these things happen during snow removal. It is unfortunate, but the association's policy clearly states that we are not liable for incidental damage during weather-related maintenance." "Incidental? Lady, my front yard looks like a war zone. This was deliberate." "Sir, I will need you to submit a formal complaint in writing. Include photos and an estimate for repairs. The board will review it at the next meeting." "When is the next meeting?" 3 weeks from Thursday." 3 weeks? Are you kidding me?" That is our regular schedule, Mr. Vance. In the meantime, please document the damage thoroughly." She hung up before I could respond. I stood there in my destroyed garden, phone in hand, watching my breath form clouds in the cold air. Sarah touched my arm. "What did they say?" "They want me to wait 3 weeks for a board meeting. They claim they are not liable." I looked at my beautiful maple tree, now hanging broken. This is not over, not by a long shot. The next morning, I was up at dawn checking my security cameras. I had installed a comprehensive system 6 months ago after someone kept letting their dog poop in my yard without cleaning it up. 4 cameras covered every angle of my property, recording continuously to a hard drive in my basement office. I scrubbed through the footage from yesterday morning, my coffee growing cold beside me. There, 7:04 a.m. The plow truck entered frame from the left, headlights cutting through the pre-dawn darkness. I watched it approach my house, my finger poised over the pause button. What I saw made my blood run cold. The driver slowed as he approached my property. The plow blade, which had been angled normally for street clearing, suddenly shifted. The driver deliberately turned the wheel, aiming the blade toward my yard. And then, clear as day in the camera's night vision, I saw him laughing. His mouth was open wide, head tilted back. He was enjoying this. The plow surged forward, blade cutting into my landscaping with obvious intentionality. The driver's face was visible for just a moment as he passed under my porch light. Young guy, maybe late 20s, baseball cap, definitely laughing. After the destruction, he straightened out and continued down the street at normal speed like nothing had happened. I played it back 3 more times, making sure I was not seeing things. Each time it was the same, deliberate, malicious, gleeful. "Sarah," I called upstairs, "you need to see this." She came down in her robe, still rubbing sleep from her eyes. I played the video for her without comment. I watched her face change as she realized what she was seeing. "He did it on purpose," she whispered. "He was laughing." "Yeah, and I am going to make sure everyone knows it." I saved the footage to 3 different USB drives and backed it up to cloud storage. Then, I sent a formal complaint email to the HOA with the video attached. I kept the language professional but firm, outlining exactly what the footage showed and demanding immediate compensation for damages. The response came 2 hours later from someone named Brenda Hutchins, HOA president. The email was 3 paragraphs of bureaucratic doublespeak that essentially said they would investigate, but made no promises. She claimed the driver would be interviewed and reminded me that the association's insurance policy had specific exclusions for snow removal operations. I got estimates from 3 landscaping companies. The cheapest was $12,000. The most expensive topped $18,000. The consensus was that one maple could be saved with professional care, but the other was a total loss. The rock garden would need to be completely reconstructed. The planter was beyond repair. I compiled everything into a detailed report, photos from multiple angles, video footage with timestamps, repair estimates, receipts from my original landscaping work. I printed copies and prepared for battle. The day of the HOA board meeting arrived with more snow. I wore my best suit, carried my documentation in a leather folder, and arrived at the community center 20 minutes early. Sarah came with me for moral support, though she had to leave early for a work call. The community center meeting room was set up with a long table at the front for the board members and rows of chairs for residents. Maybe a dozen people were already seated, most looking bored or annoyed about whatever brought them there. Brenda Hutchins entered precisely at 7 p.m., flanked by 4 other board members. Brenda was exactly what I expected. Mid-50s, aggressively highlighted blonde hair in a bob cut, enormous designer sunglasses pushed up on her head despite being indoors at night, and an expression that suggested she smelled something unpleasant. She wore a velour tracksuit that probably cost more than my car payment. "Good evening, everyone," Brenda said, her voice sugary sweet but with an edge underneath. "Let us begin tonight's meeting. First order of business is approval of last month's minutes." I sat through 45 minutes of mind-numbing HOA bureaucracy. Complaints about mailbox colors. Discussion of pool opening procedures for summer. Debate over whether the community newsletter should be printed or email only. Every topic dragged on far longer than necessary, with Brenda interjecting her opinions constantly. Finally, she said, "Next we have a complaint from a resident regarding snow removal damage." "Mr. Vance," I stood, folder in hand. "Thank you." As detailed in my written complaint, on January 7th, the HOA Plow driver deliberately destroyed my landscaping, causing over $12,000 in damage. Brenda held up a hand. "Now, Mr. Vance, I think deliberately is a strong word. I have video evidence." I pulled out my laptop and set it on the table. "May I?" She looked annoyed but nodded. I connected to the room's projector and played the footage. The room went silent as everyone watched the Plow driver aim at my yard, saw him laughing, saw the deliberate destruction. When it finished, I played it again. Then once more. "As you can see," I said, "this was intentional. The driver is clearly laughing. He aimed the plow blade at my property. This was not an accident or incidental damage during normal snow removal." One of the other board members, a man in his 60s wearing a cardigan, cleared his throat. "That does look pretty deliberate, Brenda." "We do not know the full context," Brenda said quickly. "Perhaps he sneezed. Perhaps there was ice on the road." "He is laughing," I said flatly. "There is no ice. He deliberately aimed at my yard." A woman in the audience spoke up. "I live on Maple Ridge too. I saw what he did to the Vance property. It was terrible." Brenda's expression tightened. "Mr. Vance, we sympathize with your situation, but the association's snow removal policy clearly states that we are not liable for damage occurring during winter maintenance operations. It is in the covenant you signed when you purchased your home." "That policy covers accidents," I said. "This was intentional vandalism by an HOA employee. The policy does not protect the association from criminal acts committed by its agents." "Now, see here," Brenda said, her voice rising. "We are not going to tolerate accusations of criminal behavior. Our employee made a mistake, perhaps, but that is all it was." "Then why was he laughing?" Brenda stood up, her chair scraping loudly. "This board is not going to be bullied into paying for every little bit of damage that occurs during routine operations. Snow removal is difficult work. Things happen. You chose to put expensive landscaping close to the street. Perhaps this will be a lesson learned." The room erupted. Several residents started talking at once, most of them on my side. The man in the cardigan tried to speak, but Brenda talked over him. "This meeting is adjourned," Brenda announced, gathering her papers. "We have not voted on anything," the cardigan man said. "We will take it under advisement," Brenda snapped. She looked directly at me. "Mr. Vance, the board will discuss your complaint and contact you with our decision. Thank you for coming." She swept out of the room, the other board members trailing behind like confused ducklings. I stood there, video still frozen on the screen, showing the plow driver's laughing face. An older woman approached me. "I am Dorothy Miller. I have lived here for 30 years. That woman has been a nightmare as HOA president." "This cannot be legal," I said. "You would be surprised what HOA boards think they can get away with," Dorothy said. "But you have them dead to rights with that video. Do not let Brenda bully you." Sarah had been right when she said I should have researched the HOA more carefully before we bought the house. Maple Ridge had seemed like a nice community, well-maintained, good schools nearby. The HOA fees were reasonable. I had not paid much attention to who ran it or how they operated. That was looking like a serious mistake. I spent the next morning researching HOA law in Illinois, where Maple Ridge was located, just outside Springfield. The legal landscape was complicated, but one thing was clear. HOAs were not immune from liability for intentional misconduct by their employees or agents. The snow removal policy might protect them from accidents, but deliberate destruction of property was another matter entirely. I called my insurance company to see if my homeowner's policy would cover the damage. After 20 minutes on hold and another 10 explaining the situation, the answer was no. The insurance agent explained that damage from snow removal operations by the HOA was specifically excluded from my policy. Even when it is intentional, I asked. You would need to pursue that through the HOA's insurance or take legal action against them directly, the agent said. But your policy will not cover it, regardless of intent. Dead end after dead end. I called 3 attorneys who specialized in HOA disputes. 2 did not call back. The third, a lawyer named Mitchell Graves, agreed to a phone consultation. Mr. Vance, Mitchell said after I explained the situation and emailed him the video, you have an excellent case. That footage is damning. The problem is that HOA litigation is expensive and time-consuming. Most of these cases settle eventually, but it can take months or even years. How expensive are we talking? Retainer would be $5,000. If it goes to court, you are looking at $20,000 to $30,000 in legal fees, possibly more. You might recover those costs if you win, but there are no guarantees. I felt sick. $30,000 to recover $12,000 in damages. The math did not work. Is there any other option? I asked. You could try small claims court, but the damage amount might exceed the limit. You could file a police report for vandalism. You could go to the media. Sometimes public pressure works better than legal action with organizations like HOAs. The media angle interested me. What would that involve? Contact local news stations. Show them the video. If they run the story, it creates pressure on the HOA to settle quickly to avoid bad publicity. These organizations hate looking bad to the community. I thanked Mitchell and hung up. The media option seemed promising, but I decided to give the HOA board one more chance to do the right thing. I sent another email to Brenda Hutchins, copying all board members. I kept it short and professional, reiterating my demand for compensation and noting that I had consulted with an attorney. I gave them 1 week to respond with a reasonable settlement offer. Brenda's response came the next morning. It was 2 sentences. The board has reviewed your complaint and determined that the association bears no responsibility for the damage in question. This matter is now closed. That was it. No explanation. No offer to meet halfway. Just a flat denial despite video evidence of their employee deliberately destroying my property. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at that email, feeling something shift inside me. I had tried to be reasonable. I had followed their procedures, documented everything, presented clear evidence, and they had simply told me no because they could. Time to change tactics. I called every local news station in the Springfield area. Most sent me to voicemail. One receptionist said they would pass my information to their assignment desk, but made no promises. I was starting to feel defeated when my phone rang an hour later. Mr. Vance, this is Rachel Torres from Channel 7 News. I got your message about HOA plow damage. Can you tell me more? I explained the situation while emailing her the video footage. I heard her sharp intake of breath when she opened it. "Oh, he is definitely laughing," Rachel said. "This is incredible footage, and the HOA is refusing to pay, flat-out denial. They claim they are not responsible despite clear evidence it was intentional." "Would you be willing to do an on-camera interview?" "Absolutely." Rachel and a cameraman named Jose arrived at my house that afternoon. The weather had warmed slightly, melting some of the snow, which made the damage even more visible. Broken branches, scattered stones, the demolished planter, and my poor maple tree still hanging at that terrible angle. Rachel was thorough. She interviewed me on camera, recorded extensive footage of the damage, and reviewed my documentation. When I showed her the security video on my laptop, she asked to see it 4 times. "This is going to make a great story," she said. "Clear misconduct, sympathetic victim, unresponsive bureaucracy. It hits all the notes. We will run it on the evening news tomorrow." "You think it will make a difference?" HOAs hate bad publicity. "Once this airs, they will be getting calls from angry residents. That creates pressure. I cannot promise anything, but it usually works." That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about that video, the driver's laughing face, Brenda's dismissive attitude, the casual cruelty of it all. Sarah tried to comfort me, but I was too wound up. The next evening, Sarah and I sat on the couch watching Channel 7 News. The lead story was about state budget negotiations. The second was about a car accident on the interstate. Then Rachel's face appeared on screen. A Springfield area homeowner says a Plow driver working for his homeowners association deliberately destroyed thousands of dollars worth of landscaping, and he has video to prove it. Rachel Torres has the story. The segment was 3 minutes long. Rachel did an excellent job laying out the facts, showing the before and after photos of my yard, and most importantly, playing the security footage. The video of the driver laughing as he aimed at my property looked even worse on television than on my laptop. Rachel interviewed me standing in my destroyed garden. I came across as calm and reasonable, just a homeowner asking for accountability. Then she showed Brenda's email dismissing my complaint. "We reached out to the Maple Ridge Homeowners Association for comment," Rachel said in voiceover as footage of the community center played. "HOA President Brenda Hutchins declined to be interviewed, but sent us this statement." The statement appeared on screen. "The Maple Ridge HOA takes all resident concerns seriously. However, we are not responsible for incidental damage during routine maintenance operations. This matter is being handled internally." Rachel's face reappeared. "But as you can see from this security footage, this may not have been incidental at all. Ethan Vance says he just wants his yard fixed and accountability for what happened." Rachel Torres, Channel 7 News. My phone started ringing before the segment even ended. Friends and former colleagues who had seen the story. My mother calling from Arizona, outraged on my behalf. Neighbors expressing support. Then Dorothy Miller, the older woman from the HOA meeting, called. "I just saw the news. That was perfect. Half the neighborhood is talking about it already. Brenda is going to lose her mind." "Good," I said. The story hit the station's website immediately after airing, and by morning it had been shared thousands of times on social media. The comments section was overwhelmingly supportive. People were tagging the Maple Ridge HOA's Facebook page, demanding answers. Several residents posted their own stories of Brenda's overreach and the board's general incompetence. The local newspaper picked up the story. Then, a Chicago news station called asking for an interview. The story was going regional. And still, radio silence from the HOA. 3 days after the news story aired, I got a certified letter from a law firm representing the Maple Ridge Homeowners Association. My hands shook as I opened it. The letter was breathtaking in its audacity. It accused me of defamation, claimed I had violated HOA covenants by speaking to the media without board approval, and threatened legal action if I did not issue a public apology and retraction. I read it twice, then called Mitchell Graves, the attorney I had consulted earlier. "They are trying to intimidate you," Mitchell said after I read him the letter. "This is classic slap suit territory. They have no case, but they are hoping you will be scared enough to back down. Can they actually sue me for defamation when I have video proof?" Truth is an absolute defense against defamation. They would lose badly in court. As for the covenant violation, I would need to see your HOA documents, but I seriously doubt there is any enforceable provision preventing residents from talking to the media. So what do I do? Ignore it. Or better yet, send the letter to the reporter who did your story. Let them do a follow-up about how the HOA is trying to silence you instead of addressing the problem. I like that idea. I called Rachel Torres and emailed her a scan of the letter. She called back within an hour, sounding excited. "This is perfect. Not for you, obviously, but for the story. This makes them look even worse. Can I do another segment? Please do." The second segment aired 2 days later, focusing on the HOA's threatening letter and the broader issue of HOA overreach. Rachel interviewed a lawyer who specialized in HOA law, who explained that the letter was likely an intimidation tactic with no legal merit. She also spoke with several other Maple Ridge residents who had complaints about Brenda's leadership. "There is definitely a pattern here," one woman said on camera. "The board does what it wants and threatens anyone who complains." The story ended with Rachel noting that the plow driver still had not been identified or disciplined, and that I still had not received any compensation for the damage. That night, my phone rang at 9 p.m. Unknown number. "Mr. Vance. This is Thomas Weber. I am on the Maple Ridge HOA board. You met me at the meeting, the one in the cardigan. I remember. I want you to know that not everyone on the board agrees with how Brenda has handled this. What happened to your property was wrong. That video is clear as day. But Brenda controls the board, and the other members are either too scared of her or too apathetic to push back. Why are you calling me? Because there is going to be a special election. Several residents have submitted a petition to remove Brenda and 2 other board members. We have more than enough signatures. There will be a vote at next month's meeting. This was interesting. What do you need from me? Nothing right now. I just wanted you to know that change is coming. Not everyone in Maple Ridge supports how you have been treated, and I personally want to apologize for not speaking up more strongly at that meeting. I appreciate that, Mr. Weber. Call me Thomas. And for what it is worth, I have been asking around about the driver. His name is Derek Paulson. He is Brenda's nephew. The floor dropped out from under me. What? Her sister's kid. Been in and out of trouble for years. Brenda got him the snow removal contract. No one else bid on it because she sets the terms, so no legitimate company wants to deal with the hassle. It is all falling into place now, isn't it? So this was personal. I do not know. But it is suspicious. Especially since Brenda pushed so hard to deny your claim without even investigating. After Thomas hung up, I sat in silence, processing this new information. Brenda's nephew. That changed everything. It suggested corruption, nepotism, maybe conspiracy. This was not just about my landscaping anymore. I documented the phone call in writing while it was fresh in my mind. Then I called Rachel Torres and left a voicemail with this new information. The next morning, a Springfield police detective named Maria Rodriguez called me. "Mr. Vance, I saw the news story about your property damage. I would like to talk to you about filing a formal complaint for criminal vandalism. Finally, I would appreciate that very much. Detective Rodriguez came to my house that afternoon. She was in her 40s, professional but friendly, with a no-nonsense demeanor I immediately respected. I showed her the video footage, the damage, all my documentation. "This is textbook vandalism," she said. "Intentional destruction of property. The video makes it an easy case. You know who the driver is, Derek Paulson. He is the HOA president's nephew." Rodriguez's eyebrows went up. "Is that right? That is interesting." She made notes in a small pad. "Mr. Vance, I am going to open an investigation. I will need a copy of that video and your statement. We will interview Mr. Paulson and any witnesses. This might take some time, but you did the right thing documenting everything. Will there be charges?" "That depends on what we find, but based on what I have seen so far, I would say yes. Criminal damage to property over $10,000 is a Class 3 felony in Illinois. He could face 1 to 5 years. The weight I had been carrying for weeks lifted slightly. Finally, someone with actual authority was taking this seriously. After Detective Rodriguez left, I felt energized for the first time since the incident. Things were moving. The police were investigating. A recall election was brewing. The media had exposed the HOA's corruption. This was progress. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Detective Rodriguez. "Mr. Vance, we have arrested Derek Paulson on charges of criminal damage to property. He confessed during questioning. He confessed. Once we showed him the video, he fell apart pretty quickly. Claimed it was a prank that got out of hand. He said he was angry because you complained about him leaving piles of snow at the end of your driveway during previous storms. Apparently, you called the HOA office about it." I did remember that. Back in December, the Plow had been leaving massive snow berms that blocked my driveway. I had called Patricia at the HOA office 3 times before they sent someone to clear it. So he destroyed my landscaping over a minor complaint. Essentially, yes. And he was under the influence of marijuana at the time, according to his own statement. Mr. Paulson has agreed to a plea deal. He will plead guilty to criminal damage to property, pay full restitution, serve 2 years probation, and perform community service. He is also banned from operating snow removal equipment professionally. What about Brenda Hutchins? She tried to cover this up. That is more complicated. We interviewed her. She claims she did not know her nephew was the driver until after the incident. Says she should have recused herself from the decision, but denies any criminal wrongdoing. Without evidence that she knew beforehand or actively participated in the vandalism, we cannot charge her with anything. It was not perfect, but it was something. Derek would pay for the damage and face consequences. That was more than I had a month ago. The recall election happened 3 weeks later. The community center was packed with residents, many I had never seen at an HOA meeting before. The news coverage had energized the neighborhood. Brenda tried to maintain control, but the mood in the room was hostile. When the vote was called, the result was overwhelming. Brenda, along with 2 other board members who had supported her, were removed by a margin of nearly 3 to 1. Thomas Weber was elected as the new HOA president. Dorothy Miller joined the board. 3 other residents who had been vocal about reform also won seats. At his first act as president, Thomas moved to approve full payment for my landscaping repairs, plus compensation for my time and stress. The motion passed unanimously. "Mr. Vance," Thomas said, "on behalf of the Maple Ridge Homeowners Association, I apologize for what happened to you and for how the previous board handled your complaint. We are going to do better." The room erupted in applause. Sarah squeezed my hand. I felt tears stinging my eyes but kept them in check. The check from the HOA arrived 2 weeks later. $15,000, covering the full cost of repairs plus a little extra for my trouble. I immediately hired a landscaping company to start restoration work. Derek Paulson's restitution payment came through his insurance. Another $12,000 since the criminal case required separate compensation. Between the two, I actually came out slightly ahead financially, though that felt hollow given everything I had been through. The landscaping work took 3 weeks. The company saved one of my Japanese maples with careful treatment, though it would take years to fully recover. The other had to be replaced. They rebuilt the rock garden, installed a new stone planter, and repaired all the damage. When they finished, it looked even better than before. Rachel Torres did a final follow-up story showing my restored yard and interviewing Thomas Weber about the new board's reforms. It was a nice conclusion to the media coverage that had started everything. But the best moment came on a Saturday morning in early March. I was outside inspecting my landscaping, checking the new plantings when a car pulled up. An older man got out, someone I did not recognize. "Ethan Vance?" he asked. "That is me. I am Harold Patterson. I live over in the Oakmont community, about 5 miles from here. Our HOA board has been running roughshod over residents for years. I saw your news story and how you fought back. It inspired a bunch of us to organize. We just voted out our board last night. I wanted to thank you personally." We shook hands, and Harold told me about his community's struggles with their HOA. Arbitrary fines, selective enforcement of rules, a board that treated residents like subjects rather than neighbors. It sounded familiar. "Your story showed people that you can fight back," Harold said. "That these boards are not untouchable. A lot of folks in Oakmont had given up. Seeing you win gave them hope." After Harold left, I stood in my front yard looking at the new landscaping, thinking about everything that had happened. A Plow driver had deliberately destroyed my property while laughing. An HOA president had tried to cover it up. They had threatened me, tried to intimidate me, and denied clear evidence of wrongdoing. But I had not backed down. I had documented everything, sought legal advice, gone to the media, and involved law enforcement. It had been exhausting and stressful, but in the end, justice had prevailed. Derek faced criminal charges. Brenda was removed from power. My property was restored. And apparently, my fight had inspired other communities to stand up to their own HOA bullies. Sarah came outside carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Admiring your handiwork. Just thinking about how crazy this whole thing has been. You did good, babe. A lot of people would have just given up." I almost did a few times, but it felt important, not just for us, but for everyone dealing with this kind of thing. Well, it is over now. The yard looks beautiful. Derek got what he deserved. Brenda is gone. Time to move on. She was right, of course. But I knew I would never look at HOAs the same way again. These organizations held enormous power over homeowners, often with little accountability or oversight. The system was designed to favor the board, making it expensive and difficult for individual residents to fight back. I had been lucky. I had video evidence that was absolutely damning. I had gotten media coverage that created public pressure. I had found allies in the community who were ready for change. Without those factors, I might have lost everything and been stuck with the damage. That thought bothered me. How many other homeowners had been abused by their HOA and had no recourse? How many gave up because they could not afford a lawyer or did not know how to navigate the system? I decided to write about my experience. I created a blog documenting everything that had happened, step by step. I included advice for others facing similar situations. Document everything, know your rights, do not be afraid to go to the media, file police reports when appropriate, organize with neighbors. Within a week, the blog had thousands of views. People shared their own HOA horror stories in the comments. A local newspaper asked me to write an op-ed about HOA reform. I argued that state legislatures needed to pass laws giving homeowners more protection against HOA overreach, creating easier paths to remove bad board members, and establishing oversight mechanisms to prevent abuse. The op-ed ran in April, and I got calls from 2 state legislators who were interested in sponsoring reform legislation. Nothing might come of it, but at least people were starting to pay attention. Summer arrived, and my landscaping flourished. The new Japanese maple settled in beautifully. The surviving original maple recovered better than expected, putting out healthy new growth. The rock garden looked spectacular with native wildflowers blooming among the stones. The new HOA board under Thomas Weber operated transparently and responsibly. They held regular meetings, actually listened to residents, and made decisions based on what was best for the community rather than personal agendas. It was a radical change from the Brenda era. In June, Derek Paulson's probation officer called to inform me that Derek would be performing his community service in a neighboring town, not in Maple Ridge. The officer wanted to make sure I was comfortable with that arrangement. I appreciated them checking. I never heard from Brenda again after the recall. Rumor had it she moved to Florida, though I never confirmed that. I hoped she had learned something from the experience, but I doubted it. People like Brenda rarely accepted responsibility for their actions. On a warm evening in July, Sarah and I hosted a barbecue in our backyard. We invited several neighbors, including Thomas Weber, Dorothy Miller, Mr. Chen, and some other folks who had supported us during the fight. Everyone admired the landscaping, praised the new HOA board, and shared stories about the old regime. "You know what the craziest part is?" Dorothy said, gesturing with her wine glass. "Brenda actually thought she could get away with it. That she could just deny everything and we would all fall in line like we always did. She had gotten so used to people backing down that she forgot we could fight back." "To fighting back," Thomas said, raising his beer. We all toasted, laughing and enjoying the summer evening. My front yard, the source of so much stress and conflict, had become a symbol of something positive. Standing up to bullies works. Documentation matters. Community solidarity can overcome even entrenched corruption. In August, one of the state legislators I had spoken with introduced a bill that would reform some aspects of HOA governance in Illinois. The bill included provisions for easier recall elections, mandatory training for board members, and a state-level complaint process for homeowners. It was not everything I had hoped for, but it was a start. The bill faced opposition from HOA industry groups, but it had surprising bipartisan support. Apparently, both liberals and conservatives could agree that HOA boards sometimes abuse their power. The bill passed committee in September and looked likely to reach the floor for a vote. Meanwhile, life in Maple Ridge returned to normal, or what passed for normal in a neighborhood that had just gone through a minor revolution. The new board tackled long-deferred maintenance projects. They renegotiated contracts with service providers, getting better deals than Brenda ever had. They even organized community events that brought neighbors together. In October, Channel 7 News did a follow-up story for the one-year anniversary of the original incident. Rachel Torres interviewed me in my front yard, which by then looked absolutely gorgeous with fall colors. "Looking back," Rachel asked, "was it worth it? All the stress, the time, the fight?" I thought about it carefully before answering. Yes. Not just because I got my yard fixed, though that obviously mattered, but because it showed that individuals can stand up to institutional power and win. HOAs are not above the law. Board members are not kings. Homeowners have rights. If my experience helps even one other person fight back against this kind of abuse, then yes, it was absolutely worth it. The segment ended with footage of my landscaping in all seasons, from the snowy destruction in January to the lush growth of October. It was a nice visual representation of recovery and renewal. In November, Derek Paulson's probation officer contacted me again. Derek had apparently completed his community service hours and was doing well in his court-ordered counseling. The officer asked if I would be willing to meet with Derek as part of his rehabilitation process. I thought about it for several days. Part of me wanted nothing to do with him. He had deliberately destroyed something I had worked hard to create, just because I had filed a legitimate complaint about snow removal. That was not the action of a reasonable person. But another part of me recognized that Derek was young and had made a terrible mistake. He had confessed, accepted responsibility, and was trying to do better. Holding on to anger would not change what happened. I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop in Springfield, neutral territory. Sarah came with me for support, though she sat at a separate table to give us space. Derek looked different than he had in the security video. Thinner, more tired, less cocky. He stood when I approached, hands shaking slightly. "Mr. Vance, thank you for agreeing to meet me." We sat down. Derek could not maintain eye contact. He kept looking at his coffee cup, picking at the cardboard sleeve. "I do not know how to say this without sounding like I am making excuses," Derek started. "What I did was horrible, childish and cruel and stupid. I was high. I was angry about something that did not matter, and I made a decision that hurt you and cost me everything." "Why did you do it?" I asked. Not angry, just genuinely curious. "Honestly, because I could. Because I had been getting away with stuff my whole life. Aunt Brenda always protected me, always made my problems go away. I never faced real consequences for anything. So when you complained about the snow berms, I took it personally. Like you were attacking me instead of just pointing out that I was doing my job badly. And I decided to teach you a lesson. By destroying my landscaping. Yeah. Which is insane, right? I ruined something beautiful that you worked hard on because I was too immature to handle criticism. And then I lost my job, got arrested, got a criminal record, and had to watch my life fall apart. All because I could not just plow a street properly." Derek finally looked up at me. His eyes were red. "I cannot undo what I did, but I want you to know that I am genuinely sorry. Not sorry I got caught, sorry for what I did. You did not deserve that. Nobody deserves that." We talked for another 20 minutes. Derek told me about his counseling, how he was working on anger management and impulse control. How he had gotten a job at a warehouse and was trying to rebuild his life. How the whole experience had forced him to confront problems he had been avoiding for years. I believed him. Not because he said what I wanted to hear, but because his shame and regret felt genuine. People can change. Maybe Derek would, maybe he would not, but at least he was trying. When we parted ways, I shook his hand. "I hope you figure things out, Derek." "Thank you, Mr. Vance. Really." In the car, Sarah asked, "How do you feel?" "Better, actually. I did not realize how much anger I was still carrying until I let it go." December arrived with more snow. The new plow driver, a professional hired by Thomas, cleared the streets carefully and competently. No one's landscaping was damaged. It was remarkable how well things worked when you hired qualified people and held them accountable. On Christmas Eve, we hosted Sarah's family for dinner. Her mother kept gushing about my landscaping, even though most of it was dormant under snow. "You should be so proud," she said. "After everything you went through." I was proud, not just of the landscaping, but of standing up for myself, of not backing down when it would have been easier to quit, of finding allies and building community support, of using the system even when the system was stacked against me. The next year brought new challenges and new joys, as years do. The HOA reform bill passed in Illinois with strong bipartisan support, giving homeowners across the state better tools to fight back against abusive boards. Thomas Weber credited my case with providing momentum for the legislation. My blog about the experience continued to attract readers. I received emails from people all over the country sharing their HOA stories and asking for advice. I tried to help where I could, even if just by offering encouragement. In spring, a publisher contacted me about turning my blog into a book. I initially dismissed the idea, but Sarah encouraged me to at least explore it. After some discussion, I signed a contract to write a comprehensive guide for homeowners dealing with HOA conflicts, using my story as the framework. Writing the book forced me to process everything that had happened. The initial shock of seeing my landscaping destroyed, the frustration of dealing with Brenda's stonewalling, the determination to fight back, the slow accumulation of evidence and support, the eventual victory. Each stage had lessons that might help others. The book came out the following fall. It sold modestly but steadily, finding its audience among frustrated homeowners and community activists. I did a few local media appearances and spoke at a conference about HOA reform. Nothing major, but it felt meaningful. Most importantly, life in Maple Ridge returned to being pleasantly boring. The HOA handled routine business competently. Neighbors got along. No one's landscaping was deliberately destroyed. It was everything a community should be. On the second anniversary of the incident, I stood in my front yard early in the morning, coffee in hand, watching the sun rise. My landscaping had matured beautifully. Both Japanese maples were thriving, their branches creating an elegant frame around the walkway. The rock garden was lush with native plants. The stone planter overflowed with seasonal blooms. More than just the physical restoration, though, the whole experience had taught me something valuable about power and accountability. HOA boards, like any organization, could abuse their authority if no one held them accountable, but they were not invincible. Documentation, media pressure, legal action, community organizing, all these tools were available to regular people willing to use them. I thought about that morning 2 years ago, watching the plow deliberately destroy my property, seeing the driver laugh at the damage he was causing. I remembered the anger, the helplessness, the sense that the system was rigged against me, but the system had worked eventually. Not perfectly, not quickly, but it had worked. Justice had prevailed. The wrongdoers faced consequences. The abusive board was removed. The community was better off. Sarah joined me outside, wrapping her arms around me from behind. "What are you thinking about? Just how far we have come, how different everything is now. No regrets about fighting back. Never. About buying a house in an HOA," I laughed. "Maybe a few, but we have made it work." We stood together watching the neighborhood wake up. Lights came on in houses. People emerged to retrieve newspapers or walk dogs. Mr. Chen waved from his porch. Dorothy drove past on her way to her morning yoga class, honking cheerfully. This was community. Not the authoritarian nightmare Brenda had tried to create, but genuine neighbors looking out for each other, holding leaders accountable, and working together to maintain something good. It had taken a crisis to get there, but we had arrived. The plow driver who destroyed my landscaping laughed about it and thought he could get away with it had unknowingly started something bigger than vandalism. He had sparked a movement for accountability and reform that spread beyond Maple Ridge, beyond Illinois, to communities across the country where homeowners were tired of being bullied by their HOAs. In a strange way, I was grateful. Not for the destruction itself, but for the opportunity to fight back and win. To prove that regular people could stand up to institutional power. To show that documentation, persistence, and community solidarity could overcome even entrenched corruption. My front yard, lovingly restored and better than ever, stood as a testament to that principle. You could destroy something beautiful, but with enough determination and support, it could be rebuilt. And sometimes, the reconstruction created something even better than what came before. As another winter arrived, bringing snow and ice and the need for careful plowing, I watched from my window without anxiety. The current driver was professional and competent. The HOA board was responsive and accountable. The community was engaged and vigilant. Things were not perfect. They never would be. There were still disputes and complaints and the occasional conflict, but the culture had changed. Residents knew they had rights and the board knew it had to respect them. That balance made all the difference. I continued writing and speaking about HOA reform, sharing my story with anyone who would listen. Some people thought I was obsessed, that I should move on and forget about it. But I believed the issue mattered. Millions of Americans lived in HOA communities. They deserved to live in places that empowered rather than oppressed them. The landscaping that had caused so much trouble became my favorite part of the house. Every time I looked at it, I remembered that I had stood up for myself, that I had refused to be bullied, that I had fought back and won. Those were lessons worth remembering, worth sharing, worth celebrating. And on snowy mornings when the plow carefully cleared our street without incident, I felt satisfied. Justice had been served. Accountability had been established. Community had been strengthened. My yard was beautiful again, and perhaps more importantly, the neighborhood was a better place for everyone. That was worth fighting for. That was worth all the stress and effort and conflict. Because at the end of the day, we all deserve to live in communities that treat us with respect, that acknowledge our rights, and that hold wrongdoers accountable regardless of their connections or positions of power. The plow driver thought he could destroy my landscaping and laugh about it, confident that his aunt's position would protect him from consequences. He was wrong. His aunt thought she could deny responsibility and threaten me into silence. She was wrong too. And every abusive HOA board that thinks homeowners are powerless to fight back needs to learn that same lesson. Document everything. Know your rights. Do not be afraid to seek media attention. File police reports when appropriate. Organize with neighbors. Hold leaders accountable. These are not just strategies for HOA disputes. They are principles for any situation where power is being abused. My story ended well because I had video evidence, media coverage, legal advice, and community support. Not everyone will have all those advantages, but the principles remain the same. Do not accept abuse. Do not give up. Fight back with every legitimate tool available, because sometimes you win. And even when you do not, fighting back sends a message that people will not tolerate being mistreated. The winter sun climbed higher, melting frost from my Japanese maples. Another day in Maple Ridge, peaceful and uneventful, exactly as it should be. I finished my coffee and headed inside, ready to face whatever challenges the day might bring, secure in the knowledge that I could handle them. Because I had already faced down one of the worst situations a homeowner could encounter, and I had emerged victorious. That was something no one could take away from me. Not Derek Paulson with his plow, not Brenda Hutchins with her threats, not anyone. My landscaping stood as proof that beautiful things could survive attempts to destroy them, that justice could prevail over corruption, and that ordinary people had more power than they realized. Those were lessons worth learning, worth sharing, and worth fighting for, today and always.